no two adoption stories are exactly the same. Some children join their families as newborn babies through private domestic adoption. Others travel across the globe to join a family through intercountry adoption. And many children are adopted from the foster care system after experiencing profound adversity. Although every adoption story is different, one thing that they all have in common is that they all begin with loss. Even when the story has a happy ending, joining a new family means separating from another family. Whether that separation resulted from a loving plan or a traumatic event, children need to know their story. In this video, we explore the role and responsibility of adoptive parents in 3 essential areas. First, sharing the birth and adoption story, the whole truth, good and bad, and being honest about what is known and what is not known. Next, clarification and integration, the process of helping adopted children make sense of what happened to them and who they are, even when information is limited or unavailable. And finally, strategies for sustaining an ongoing conversation about birth, adoption, and identity. We'll hear from adoption experts. We'll listen to professionals in the field who also share the lived experience of being adopted. And we'll visit with Robert and Sandra Coy, parents of 5 children, all of them adopted from the child welfare system, as they share the lessons they've learned on their adoption journey.
Everyone should know where they came from. When we met Andrew, our oldest, we were completely in love, and we immediately wanted to take him home and have this fresh start with him. Part of that fresh start, we felt, was not to bring up things, not to discuss things that were painful or hurtful or that might trigger him in different ways. So we avoided talking about his birth family, his birth mom, his experiences.
When the Coys adopted Andrew, he was 12 years old. He remembered his birth family and had many unanswered questions. The Coys had access to information about their son's history. They'd read his file, but they avoided the topic to protect him.
We would tend to say things like, we don't have to worry about that anymore, whenever he would bring up things. You're safe now. We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. So we set up an environment with him where we just didn't really communicate that because we felt like that was what was the right thing to do. Turns out, as he grew older, that was not the right thing to do. He struggled with it. He had questions. He didn't feel safe that he could come to us, and that affected our relationship. We didn't understand how important that was for us to talk about and process what he'd been through with his mom so that he and I could actually have that fresh start. We learned that later.
What we know is that children want their truth. They don't want to be protected from their stories.
Adoptive parents don't always know the whole story. When this is the case, it's important to be honest.
One of the things that I think my parents did a really good job of was being very transparent with what they didn't know about my adoption story. And I think that in an attempt to try and help their adopted children, a lot of parents will try and make up stories, or they will make up euphemisms. My parents never said, oh, your mother loved you so much that she gave you up for adoption, which a lot of adoptees hear.
There are times, though, when the information simply isn't available. It's important to explicitly state that.
If you just say, I don't know what your story is, this is all that we were given.
But express a willingness to always keep searching, to look for the information, to fill the voids, whether that's a trip to a child's native city, sitting down together with those life books, sitting down at the internet, looking at a globe, looking at a map together. There's opportunity to fill gaps. Help them put together the pieces.
It's that not knowing that is so hard. I describe it, because I'm a big reader, as picking up a book and starting a story in the 3rd chapter and not knowing the background or the setup for what is to come. And so we enter into our families with huge pieces missing, and For many of us, part of the magical thinking about being a child is making up stories about what those missing pieces might be, those first couple of chapters.
When we're not honest about it, a child will seek the information in other ways. And whether that's simply narrative that they created in their head or going to extended family members by way of the internet, they're desperate for information. They need it, and they will seek it.
I used to have the belief that I had siblings who were also living in the United States, and I would have fantasies that maybe I would just walk down the street and I would bump into a sibling and we would just know.
Sometimes we hear parents say, I'm going to tell them when they're older. Not a good plan, because older, there is no perfect age, and older goes farther and farther out.
There sometimes never seems to be a right place or right time, and I would suggest today is always the right place and the right time, and it's our job.
They need to know their story. It is their story, and they have a right to their story and to own it, so we share it with them, but we know it's not always easy.
A sense of identity grows out of knowing where we come from, who we belong to, and how we fit in.
Aww, look how cute you are. You're still cute.
The process of clarification and integration helps adopted children make sense of their story by filling in the gaps, separating fact from fantasy. This process allows children to integrate their past with their present, and, ultimately, their future. Only then can the young person develop an authentic identity. Part of a parent's role is to share available information and, where information is scarce, to be proactive in helping the child learn more. This is the home where Robert and Sandra Coy are raising the family they always dreamed of, a family of 7 in a house full of laughter and love. Robert and Sandra adopted all 5 of their children from the child welfare system. Their approach to sharing the children's life stories was shaped by each child's memories, experiences, and readiness to receive factual information. For children adopted privately or from other countries, or by relatives, the process of clarification and integration will look very different, but the same principles of honesty and openness apply. This is one family's story of transformation. 7 years after Andrew joined the family, the Coys adopted again. This time, they welcomed a brother and sister with a history of complex trauma and 10 disrupted placements in 5 years.
Lily was 8, Noah was 10. They had a lot of behavioral problems. Lily was having tantrums every day. Noah would get angry quickly, and he was very aggressive. They'd been in our house for a few weeks, and it was really hard.
Around that time, the Coys learned of a training on trauma, grief, and loss that was being piloted in their community. Sandra signed up.
For you to gain a child, there was a loss somewhere.
The very first class, they said to us, you need to talk about the birth story. You need to have the birth parent conversation. And he just kind of looked at me.
I wasn't comfortable with it at all. I know where they came from. I want to protect them. I just want to keep all that away from us.
But we talked about it, and we said, okay, well, let's give this a shot. So I found photos of their birth parents, and I printed out 2 copies, a copy for Noah and a copy for Lily. When we sat down with them, the first thing we had to establish with them was, you are safe here. You understand that we are mom and dad now, and that we are here to protect you, and that nobody's ever going to hurt you again like the way that you'd been hurt before. Yes, we understand. Okay, let's talk about, what do you remember? They remembered a lot, and the more they talked, the more they opened up. I remember when this and this happened. This is what I remember. Remember when I had to feed you and I was 5, or we were by ourselves, or whatever the case may be. Then they started asking questions, and we had to really be mindful of how we replied, being age appropriate. We didn't want to say, you know what, she abandoned you, or whatever the case was.
We really never want to denigrate birth parents, no matter what the history is. Children are of their birth parents. If we say birth parents are not worthy, then we're saying our children are not worthy.
Clarity about what it means to be adopted can help children form their own identity.
make sure that when you're telling their story, these parents made you. They are a part of you, they're a part of your story, but this is not who you have to be. And then we said, here are pictures. Here's a copy for you, and here's a copy for you. You can either keep the photos, we can put them in your room, or I can save them for you so that when you're older, I can give them back to you when you're ready, or you don't have to keep them at all. And Lily kind of said, I think I want you to hold on to them for me. Noah said, no. He ripped those things up. He went right away to the trash, threw them in the trash, and he said, I'm gonna take the trash out right now.
He was fired up. It was dark outside. He wanted to get that picture out of the house. Did not want it close to him.
He was just that angry.
Opening the conversation in this way signaled to the children that it was safe to express their frustration, anger, and sadness in this home. It also gave them some control about moving the conversation forward.
That was our turning point. That was our breakthrough moment with our kids, because they suddenly felt safe, and we were talking about something that nobody else would talk to them about. We had set ourselves apart. We were telling them the truth. And after that, everything started changing.
Felt lighter. The whole mood of the house felt lighter.
They started trusting us. It empowered them when we gave them their story.
2 years later, the Coy family welcomed 2 more children. Samuel, age 7, and Marcus, 9, brothers who had been separated in foster care. This time, Sandra and Robert were prepared for the birth-parent conversation.
On our first Easter with all 4 of the little ones, we started coloring eggs. And we set it up, we had them all take part in it, and Marcus was a little standoffish because he'd never had this experience before. And he started to cry, and he started to get angry. And he said, why couldn't my birth parents do this with me? Why couldn't they be here and be these kind of parents? Why did they have to hurt me? And he actually said, well, I don't even understand why I have to have new parents. Where are my parents? So Rob and I looked at each other and we're like, okay, here we go, he's ready.
The Coys knew where to find information about their children's histories. For some adoptive families, information is not as readily available.
It's not uncommon for little information to be known or no information in some cases.
And so this is where our job becomes even more, I think, challenging in being able to help them fill in some of the missing pieces.
When parts of the story are missing or unavailable, there are still meaningful ways to help a child fill in the missing pieces.
Seek it out. Seek out information about a child's birthplace. Help the child learn all they can about that city and what's special about that city and what's unique about the people of that city. Perhaps the city is known for a special food. Make that food. Particularly in cases where little information is known, it provides a great opportunity for the parent and child to together seek the narrative that will help the child better know their story and develop a positive sense of self and self-esteem.
At every developmental stage, adopted children understand their story differently and have different questions. So adoptive parents will continually need new strategies and skills for initiating conversations and answering questions. It's important to remember that this is an ongoing conversation that will take place for the rest of your lives. These conversations vary depending on the type of adoption, the amount of information that is available, and the child's needs.
We introduced the basic story in the preschool years of being able to say there are 2 ways that families are formed. One is by birth and the other is by birth and adoption. They were born to a man and a woman, and then their family adopted them, and that's how they became a family. Children may ask why, just because preschoolers ask why about everything. So simple answers, that your parents were not able to take care of you, and so we became your parents. In the school age years, children's brains change, and now they can cognitively understand that to be with their adoptive family, they had to lose their birth family. And so then when they ask why, now they do mean why, because they do want to know why this happened to them and where their birth family is. In adolescence, teens are now asking why from a whole different perspective. They have a much more sophisticated, deeper understanding of what adoption means and what the reasons for their being placed means. And so usually their feelings can be far more intense.
By adolescence, they should have their whole story, no matter how hard it is.
As we've seen, adoptive parents don't always know the whole story. Information that is known should be shared with the young person, and children should perceive that their parents are open to helping them explore the unknown. Just because a child doesn't bring up the subject doesn't mean it's not on their mind. Adoptive parents may need to initiate these conversations.
I think, we have to do a little internal inventory of where we are with these issues. Sometimes I tell parents, go in the bathroom and kind of practice the conversation and look at yourself and see what are your nonverbal cues that you're delivering that give a different message that I'm open, but I'm not open to talking about this.
Adoptive parents need to take on the responsibility for bringing up the subject, for conveying the message that they are always open to talking about adoption with them. Parents can say something like, gee, I often think about your birth parents and I wonder how they're doing, or I wonder what's happening.
I think that we have to sort of throw out the conversation. It's the pebble technique. What happens when you put a pebble in a pond is it creates a rippling effect.
I like the I wonder questions because then I throw it out and a child can think about it, they can answer if they want, but they can just process it too. I wonder if today's hard for you because this was your mom's birthday or because Mother's Day is coming.
If there's a story in the news, of which there are many, or there's a story on television or in the movies, something that references adoption, these are times when it's natural to bring up the subject.
There are lots of movies and television shows and books where adoption or foster care or orphans are a theme. It's so prevalent. That gives parents actually the opportunity to use these storylines and to talk about how other children might be feeling, to initiate a conversation. It's easier maybe to talk about it through another character than to ask a child how they feel themselves.
When you finish off your conversation, the initial conversation, you have to actually say the words to them. When you feel like you have questions, and as you get older, you are going to have more questions, ask us. And it's been an ongoing conversation. We will be sitting around the table doing homework, and Samuel might say, "Did my birth mom love me? Do I have the same birth dad as Marcus? How many sisters and brothers did I have again? Did they have any more children?" We just try to make it a natural thing because it is always going to be an ongoing conversation. Even last night at dinner, Samuel's usually the one that asks the most questions. "How did you know you wanted to adopt us?" "Because we fell in love with you. I saw your picture and I said, there are my kids. I have been waiting for you."
This ongoing conversation may never include full factual information about the child's family of origin. But part of integrating the child's birth and adoption story means embracing where they come from.
Learn about the culture. Do that from the earliest points of life and authentically incorporate that culture into your home. And I suggest that you do that in a way that feels good to everyone in the family.
It shouldn't be just what I call drive-by culture. You don't just stop by on the way and visit for a little bit. It should be part of your whole life. Even if the child, and I get this question a lot, my child doesn't want to have anything to do with her Chinese culture. We've been trying, we've been going to culture camps, we've been going to these different events, and now she's 12 and she says, "Don't make me go anymore, I don't want to do it." That's fine. But what are you still doing that shows that you value the Chinese culture? Are you still reading books? Are you still going to Chinese culture camps and talking to the other parents? What are you doing? So that the burden isn't only just on the child, and that we do these events because it's important to our family. It's a family value.
Over time, it became second nature for the Coys to talk openly about their children's birth families and anything else that was on their minds. It was a new way of parenting, different from the way they'd parented Andrew. By now, Andrew had turned 18 and left home.
So he was not a part of that process. And our relationship with him was really in a really bad place.
Sensing that his parents were unwilling to discuss his feelings about his birth family, Andrew had searched on his own and reconnected with his birth mother.
We were complicit in making him feel like he had to hide it because we weren't open and we didn't communicate with him. We loved Andrew.
Yes.
We didn't know how to repair, what was broken. But as we started going through this process with the other kiddos, we started thinking maybe we can fix this with Andrew.
So they reached out to their son and asked for another chance at a relationship.
When we reconnected, we started having some really open conversations, adult conversations. By this time, he was 19 years old.
When Andrew moved back home with his adoptive parents, he could sense the change in them.
It wasn't just that Noah and Lily and Marcus and Samuel were growing, we were growing. They were showing us how to grow up as parents as well. I think it made a difference that I said, you know what? I was wrong and I made mistakes. I'm so sorry that it went down the way that it did. And I made mistakes. And you deserved better. It taught me a lesson too, about how I wanted to be a mother and how I should have been a mother to you. And I'm glad that we've had this time now really to rebuild this relationship. I feel like you're more receptive to that.
Yeah.
And Rob, I think, approached it the same way. Let's talk about this. But not just wipe the slate clean, because you can't do that. Right. We have to process what's happened and what's going to happen from here. What do we want to happen from here? What kind of relationship do we want to have?
I know that this is my home. Y'all are my parents, and I wouldn't want that any other way.